Why does Demacia hate all magic users? Can a nation built on fear of magic ever find peace within its own borders? And what is the secret history of Demacia? Years ago in Runeterra, there were these crazy destructive wars known as the Rune Wars. A lot of people died, etc., but some of the survivors of the war fled far west to be safe from the chaos. Once these survivors migrated, they found an ancient forest. The forest was weird. There were these white trees everywhere, and what was odd is that these trees were made from a material that did not allow anyone to use magic near them. Now for the survivors, this was great as the Rune Wars were caused mainly by magic, so a location where magic cannot be used, it was a jackpot. This felt like a safe haven for them. News of this place got spread all over Runeterra, which made more people seek refuge in this forest. Over time, as more people settled here and built homes, they named the nation as Demacia. The people of Demacia did not forget what caused them to leave their old home, so they made strict laws on magic being forbidden and not allowed within their territory. Demacia as a nation was thriving. They did not have an ambition to grow, they just wanted to protect their own and didn't care about others. And I mean, their army was not really that big. It was very small compared to other nations like Noxus or Freyord. However, their small army was very strong, and since magic can't happen in Demacia, they were able to defend themselves from attacks. And in the beginning of Demacia, they even had gods who lived amongst them. One of the refugees of the Rune Wars who migrated was a man named Kayle. He had twin daughters called Kayle and Morgana. Their mother was Mira, the host of the aspect of justice. She was a god basically. When she passed, her daughters unlocked their celestial powers and became aspects of justice. This is true as when Zephyra, a place in Demacia, was attacked, the gods Kayle and Morgana came to save them. However, there came a time when Kayle and Morgana fell out. Basically, Demacia had very strict punishments on anyone who committed a crime. So when Kayle used to want to punish any crime doers, Morgana used to preach that if they are truly sorry and wanting to make a change, then we should not kill them and give them a second chance. And even Kayle's okay with this, but Kayle had a cult following who hated this about Morgana. In particular, a man named Ronus, who was Kayle's protege. He tried to imprison Morgana, but when Morgana freed herself, he died in the process. This was massive and caused riots in the city, and when Kayle returned, she was pissed and wanted to fight the killer of Ronus. She finds out it's Morgana and they have a crazy battle for days. As they are fighting, the whole city is getting destroyed and they only stop as they hear their dead father's cries from the skies. A bit cringe, but they're gods, so it's possible. This then leads both Kayle and Morgana to leave. Kayle goes to hide in a place called Targon and Morgana hides in the wilds of Demacia. And you know what I don't like about this story is that all it would take was a 30-second conversation between Morgana and Kayle to fix their issues. But Riot loves making stories where speaking to each other is impossible and two people just end up fighting. The same stuff happens to Yasuo and Yone in Ionia, but that's for a different video. And I want to pause the video here and explain the Rune Wars to anyone who does not know. You can skip this part. In Runeterra, there is a place called Noxus, which is Old Noxus. Noxus is also a thriving nation, but a nation that wanted to conquer and expand their territory. And they do exactly this, expanding their influence and size until they eventually find something known as the World Runes. The World Runes in Runeterra are powerful runes that were used by a group of unknown celestial gods to shape Runeterra. It is not confirmed how many there are, but there's a cinematic with a character called Rise where he's in a room with 5 pillars, and 4 of them are filled with the World Runes. And since one of those pillars is empty, we assume there are 5 World Runes. This also aligns with the rune pages in League of Legends where there are 5 sets of runes. Once Noxus gets in possession of these runes, the runes get into the hands of many different groups who then cause insane destruction amongst each other. Like literally, a lot of civilizations were wiped from these rune wars. Eventually, the world runes were stopped due to a person named Rise and his master Tiras. I keep on saying Rise a lot. He's probably one of the strongest sorcerers in Runeterra, and in summary, dude's mission is to always keep the world runes away from evil people. And to bring it back to Demacia, these were the wars that caused survivors to migrate and eventually form Demacia. And side note, Noxus after the Rune Wars also became known as Noxus. And you know how early in this video I mentioned how Demacia was always good at defending themselves even though they had a small army, and they made the most of the fact that magic can't happen in their land. Well, sometimes they would not fight on their land. Some of the invaders were smart and would drag out the war to areas where magic can occur, so Demacia needed a formal defense for these fights that were outside of their mainland no magic allowed territory. So the Demacian leaders asked a man named Duran a massive task. Duran was a sculptor and he was able to create a statue that is mobile and could be used in wars abroad and not in Demacian lands. And he does exactly this. He creates a statue called Galio. Galio was very interesting as he was created out of a special material called petricite. This material is all over Demacia. It's made from the trees that did not allow magic to occur. and petricite is used by many of the soldiers when fighting in wars, etc. However, Duran figured out something really interesting that others could not, that petricite did not actually suppress magic, it instead absorbed magic. And he found out that the magic that is absorbed can be used or extracted in different ways. Knowing this, he made it that Galio is always inactive, and the only times he can become active is if he can sense magic nearby, as Galio would absorb that magic and this wakes him up. His sole purpose is to defend Demacia, and Galio is intended to be used when Demacia is fighting off invaders away from their lands. After some time, Demacia had its first king, and this was a man named Jarvan I. And remember I mentioned that Noxus becomes Noxus after the Rune Wars? Well, Noxus, just like Noxy, also wants to expand his territory, and eventually they reach dangerously close to the Demacian territory and invade Demacia. This was Demacia's first proper war, so much so that usually the army is alone to defend Demacia, but for this war, the king himself went to fight. The war was bloody, and at first Demacia was winning against Noxus's proud hero known as Sion. However, there is a reason Sion was worshipped as a war god, as when Noxus is losing the war, Sion did his famous charge and genuinely killed everyone except the king himself. This then leads to a final battle between Sion and King Jarvan. They battled hard, however in the end Jarvan actually beat Sion. But you know how in League of Legends when Sion dies he becomes a crazy beast? Well, the same happens. So as Sion is dying, he with his dying breath is able to choke the king and kill him. This is huge as the Demacian king is now dead. And a cute little irrelevant fact is that Sion years later gets resurrected by Noxus and his jaw is actually Jarvan I's crown. We are now going to skip some time to a different king known as Jarvan III. This dude is now the current king of Demacia. He has a son who he also named Jarvan, but don't worry, he is super unique about it, so calls him Jarvan IV. Jarvan III was kinda chill and kinda cool. One day he captures a group of Noxian gladiators, and for a bit of fun he makes all of the Noxians fight against a group called the Dauntless Vanguard in an arena. These were Demacia's elite warriors, and after the arena ended, it's usual practice to kill all of the enemies. But Jarvan was like, nah, you can all stay alive. There was also a particular Noxian gladiator known as Viscero. This guy caught Jarvan's attention, so much so that Jarvan asked for him to be summoned to his quarters. Jarvan respected Viscero as the strongest fighter in the whole arena, so offered him the chance to return back to Noxus. Viscero said no, I want to stay in Demacia, as he felt touched by Jarvan not killing him. He then goes on to tell the king how he was actually born in Ionia and his name was Xin Zhao, and how he got captured by Noxus and forced to fight. So he was kind of relieved that the Demacians caught him. The king asks him, what are your intentions in Demacia? To which Xin Zhao says that he wants to join the king's guard and protect him. The king said, how can you prove yourself to be capable? So Xin Zhao took down every guard near the king and put a blade to the king's neck. He knew that he would be executed for pointing a blade at the king, however the king was no idiot. He actually used logic. Since Jin was able to take down every guard, the king knew his guards are clearly pathetic and could learn a lot from him. Since then, Xin Zhao not only became Jarvan III's most trusted guardian, but his best friend, and eventually the king adopted him as a brother. So technically Xin Zhao is an uncle to Jarvan IV. Also, I don't know if I made it obvious, but Demacia as a nation hates all magic users. They think they are evil and messed up. Jarvan III was probably the first king who actually began to stop hating mages. This is important information and I will come back to this later, because the king actually dies, and his death is very important for the future of Demacia. I mentioned how the king had a son called Jarvan IV. He is also a character you can play in League of Legends. At this point he is Prince Jarvan and he recently got promoted to General. And side note, the Noxian Demacian war is kinda always ongoing, with small battles happening in different places. When Jarvan IV becomes a general, he marches with his army to bring stability to a place ruined by Noxian presence. However, the Noxians responded to this by sending their Trifarian Legion to a place known as the Gates of Mourning. The Trifarian Legion is the legion formed as a part of the new ruling system of Noxus, under Swain as their Grand General alongside Darius and a third member not confirmed, but we think it's LeBlanc. The Noxians took over the gates and word of this came to Jarvan. Dude got pumped and started marching to the gates himself, but he was too cocky. My guy got slapped by the Noxians before he even got close to the gates. The Noxians had him encircled, so he and the survivors ran into nearby forests. They were being hunted for days and he eventually gets shot by an arrow, so Jarvan ends up collapsing. But don't worry, he did not die, as he gets saved by a purple skinned woman. And this woman was Shyvana, and in case you don't know, Shyvana is a human dragon thingy magic user, so it's ironic how the prince who hates mages gets saved by one. As of right now, I've been hyping up how Demacia is defending itself against Noxus and other invaders, and how they hate mages, and how every king is called Jarvan. but there's also a fat civil war in Demacia. This one is juicy. Let me tell you how this begins, but for me to do this, I need to tell you about someone called Sylas and a girl named Lux. Let's begin with Sylas. Sylas was born in a place called Dregborn in Demacia, but my guy was a rat. Well, kind of. From a young age, he developed magical abilities, and we know magic is naughty, so Sylas's parents convinced their own son to turn himself into the Mage Seekers. The Mage Seekers are a group in Demacia who literally hunt mages. The Mage Seekers realize that Sylas has a special ability to seek out other magic users, so they use him to hunt mages within the city. Sylas helped them, therefore he is a rat. However, over time he began to notice that they are labeling mages as criminals when they did nothing wrong but just exist. And he noticed that mages who were nobles or rich were able to get away from being labeled as criminals. He didn't like this, and this was something on Sylas's mind going forward. So one day, Sylas and his mage seekers encountered a mage living in the countryside, and after finding out it's a young girl, Sylas felt bad for her. So he actually tried to protect the young girl from the mage seekers. So when they tried to grab her, he tried shielding the girl with his own body. However, as Sylas tries to protect the girl, he makes contact with her, and her magic went through Sylas and came out of him. But the magic was out of his control and was hitting everyone. So much so that he managed to kill all of the mage seekers with him. Knowing he would be called a murderer, Sylas went on the run, and well, he was right, as the Demacian people have now announced Sylas as the most wanted person in Demacia. He was actually still young at this point, and he does eventually get caught and sentenced for life. So now he is in a deep prison within Demacia, and in case anyone is wondering why he can't just break out with this crazy power, his shackles are made of petricite. It's the same material Galio is made from, and he does not know that petricite can absorb magic. He believes that it removes magic completely, therefore he cannot use his magic to currently break out of the shackles. I will stop talking about Sylas for a bit and tell you about Lux. She was born into a noble family of Demacia known as the Crown's Guard family, and just like the name, her family would protect the king. And her brother Garen did exactly this. However, she was different to Garen and her family as she was a mage. And her family knew that she was a mage, but they tried to keep it a secret from everyone because if she got caught, then bye bye Lux. She for years tried to keep her mage powers hidden and would practice alone at night, but she couldn't really teach herself. And as well as that, she really had no guidance on what she is doing. So one day, she is with her brother and she sees him chase down a magic girl, immobilizing and arresting her. She was terrified as she knew that she could also be that girl herself one day. When that girl got arrested, Lux noticed that she had a spell book. Lux took that book and used it in secret to practice her own magic. And this is when she found out that Demacia's history involved taking spell books and hiding them. So she used her Crown's Guard name to find these books and improve her magic. She got a lot better at controlling her powers, but she was still mid. And when she was returning home one day, she came across a doorway she did not know where it led to, but it was guarded by 2 guards. She uses her name to get in, and as she enters, she realized this is the place where mages were being kept. She was horrified at the conditions of these cells. She was also thinking that this could have been her if she got caught and wasn't of a high status in Demacia. The mages were treated like animals and forced to drink a liquid that would lessen their magical powers. Inside this place, Lux noticed a big door. Inside that door was Sylas. She enters this door and speaks to Sylas. They get on really well, and over time she started seeing him more often, as she wanted him to teach her how to control her magic, and in return she would bring him books he can read. However, she did not know that he requested a book known as the Manuscript of Duran. And in case you don't remember, Duran was the dude who built Galio. Sylas wanted to understand petricite more and how he can escape his shackles, which were made of petricite. Through reading the book, he learns the truth about petricite and learns how it absorbs magic instead of suppressing it. However, he learns for him to do this, he needs a source of magic, and that source would be Lux. But he finds out too late, as Lux's family found out that she has been secretly talking to Sylas, so they don't let her see him anymore and have now asked for the execution of Sylas. So let's give some time. Sylas is now brought to be executed at a scaffold. Lux does try to fight for his rights and explain he isn't a villain, but none of that works. However, as he's about to die, Sylas is able to use his shackles and touch Lux. This was massive, as he had predicted her power surged into the shackles, ready for him to unleash the magic, and with that magic he blasted his way free, killing everyone except Lux. He then released all of the mages from the prison too. This is massive and the big starting point to the Demacian civil war. Sylas destroyed the prison with all of the mages. He gathered them and they stormed the king's palace. However, as he gets there, he notices that King Jarvan III is dead. This is important as Sylas did not kill the king. Yes, he wanted to, but he didn't. It was someone else, a girl called Katarina. She was ordered to kill the king under the orders of General Swain from Noxus. Noxus is why Jarvan I died and why Jarvan III has died. And the reason Swain wanted this to happen is so it is easier for Noxus to conquer Demacia. And a bit of side knowledge, the next heir to the throne is probably not a surprise, but it's Jarvan IV. And after seeing that Jarvan III is dead, Sylas wanted to kill the next heir. However, Garen had assembled the soldiers and fought Sylas and his crew. But Garen nearly killed Sylas, but Sylas gets saved by a mage seeker who used to mentor him back in the days known as Caitlyn. He then escapes through the tunnels of the city and wants to grow his army in order to fight back. Everything in Demacia was tense right now. Noxus is fighting them on borders in different places, and at the same time the king has just died, and there is major civil unrest within the nation. The mage seekers went on a massive hunt, taking down and arresting any mage. Old, young, didn't matter, and Lux was super against this. So much so that Garen told her let's frame someone else to hide her magic, but she's like, nah, that's snaky. So she gathered a group of mages to escape through the sewers too. Garen finds this out and sees her. You would think he would beat them up, but he actually doesn't and lets her go. And due to the mage seekers going on in their wild hunt for any magic user, this kind of worked in Sylas' favor as more places within Demacia began to revolt against the kingdom. Sylas also started to get a fair amount of allies on his side. He met a particular spellcrafter known as Leilani that led a group of rebel mages in Zephyra. Sylas teamed up with Leilani and told her he wants to kill Eldred Crownguard, leader of the mage seekers. Eldred is a prick, by the way, no relevance to the story, but he's a prick. Sylas and his boys were one day stealing supplies and he finds a feather of the veiled lady. He was interested in who is this, so he seeks out the power source and ended up finding a lady in purple. He meets her and speaks to her, finding out her name is Morgana. Kinda cool, right? Morgana agreed that the mage seekers are asses, but she did not agree to helping Sylas as she did not agree with his vengeance. Sylas didn't care and ignored her, and then he leads his crew to assault the great city until he reached Eldred's office and slayed him. This then makes Jarvan and Shyvana battle Sylas, and then Sylas has to decide between killing them or saving his allies. He ends up choosing to save his allies, and in the process Leilani casts a spell which sacrifices herself but allows Sylas and everyone else to escape. So Leilani is now dead, and this was kinda needed as Sylas began to understand what Morgana meant by his definition of vengeance not being good. He then visits her again, and this time she gives him a weapon to defeat the mage seekers, and she also showed him a vision of the past of Demacia's founding. She showed him Demacia was built through mages and non-mages working together to create the nation, but the mage seekers lied about the truth and made the people believe that magic is the root of all evil. This is massive, because in the beginning, I told you that people fled the Rune Wars to make Demacia and they all hated magic. They actually didn't. Yes, the Rune Wars were magical, but people weren't stupid and realized not all magic users are bad, and magic users lived in peace with non-magic users. This part of the lore is so good, man, I get goosebumps. This also changed the method Sylas would use. Instead of focusing on killing mage seekers, he focused on saving mages. And speaking about mage seekers, after Eldred died, a person called Wisteria took his place and forced Jarvan IV to allow the execution of mages, which forces Shyvana, who we think is Jarvan's love by the way, to leave in fear of being killed. Sylas doesn't give up. He actually interrupts one of these executions and shows the people Morgana's vision and tells the public the truth about the roots of Demacia. The public are actually in favor of Sylas and do not want to persecute the mages. However, this did not stop crazy Wisteria, as she in the background leads a group of mage seekers to exterminate a camp of mages in Terbicia, where the mages were led by Lux. Sylas, Garen and Shyvana go to stop Wisteria and they are actually able to stop her. And in the aftermath of this battle, Jarvan IV reconsidered his actions and would allow to follow through with his father's wishes, which is to disband the mage seekers. I don't care what anyone says, but Demacia is pure cinema and I love it. The Civil War was a great opportunity for Noxus to invade them, but the Civil War was needed as now Demacia is stronger than ever and Noxus does not only have to fight the non-mages of Demacia, but also the mages of Demacia, basically doubling their military power. So the questions are, will Demacia finally be at peace within its own borders? And now that Demacia is stronger, can Noxus still take over Demacia? If you want to know more about Noxus, watch the suggested video. This will be the outro. It's 4 in the morning. Like and subscribe. Thank you. Love you. Bye.